It is Monday, and you are here for another live interview. I'm Chris. I'm the Longbox Punk. He's Ken. He's Bloodbot Comics. Dude, thanks for hanging out on a Monday morning with me. Of all the days of the week, here we are on
Yeah.
Monday.
Well, if anytime you need to get together with the homies is definitely Monday is like the day to do it. Like
That's
we were
right.
just talking about, like those get up under your skin and just have you like, it's gonna be on Monday. So,
Yep,
thanks for having me on. Can't think of a
absolutely.
better way to spend my Monday than be talking about comics and probably hockey at some point and
I'm sure.
hanging
Yeah.
out with the bro.
Yeah. So, okay. For those that don't know who you are, what you're about, what's your give me your origin story? Like, how did you end up here making comics in 2024?
Okay, so I'm Ken B, Bloodbot Comics. As you can probably surmise from the title, I am a creator of Christian comics. Um, just getting started though, so we only have a couple things just yet. But long story short, this is how I came to be here. I spent a lot of time promoting indie books, particularly Valiant. You're familiar with
Yep.
Valiant Watch, and that was really fun. But somewhere along the lines, I got a little bit more serious about just being my walk with the Lord and using my talents to His glory. I'll tell you a quick story on that. So, went to the Ark exhibit. Right, this was actually like the straw that broke the camel's back when I was praying about what to do with the podcasting and whatever. So we get to the Ark, and there's a part called the Fairy Tale Ark, and it's like all like the different kids' books, and on the wall it says something like, "If I can convince you a snake can't talk, I can convince you not to fear God," or something like that. I forget exactly what the quote is. But the thing that got me was all of the books were like Moses, and he's like, or not Moses, and like Noah, and he's like,
Yeah.
and they're just like hanging out, and there's like pink elephants bouncing around, and there's glitter, and you're like 9 billion people got drowned. I don't really think that's the appropriate way to present that story.
Right.
Uh, you know what I mean? The Bible says beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. So if you remove that from the equation, then a healthy fear, whatever. I got time to get in a whole theological. But long story short, when I saw that, I was like, dang, that's a problem. Like somewhere along the lines, we made like Veggie Tales and then just stopped, and that's kind of a problem. Bible Man sucks. That's kind of a problem. So I just, with everything that I had going on, I was like, well, what would it look like if somebody took the medium seriously for the art that it is? Because make no mistake, sequential art is art. Comics is art, just
Yep.
like any other form of literature, just like painting, sculpting, whatever. It's the method that we use to tell stories. The Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all of these things will exist long after we're dead and gone, barring the Lord taking us home. So um, it seems foolish to me when you think about like the Matthew 28 Great Commission, right? You're going to get a whole lot of Bible today, guys. So I'm sorry to tell you, but but the Great Commission, we're supposed to just go out and tell people like, hey, Jesus still saves. So why wouldn't I go? Me being a lifelong fan of the medium, why wouldn't this be an area where I'd want to show people that being a Christian is not about being corny? It's not about I'm so holy, or I'm perfect and flawless, and I never screw up, and I never have days where I struggle or any of that. So that brings us full circle to Pulpit, which is the premier book from Bloodbot Comics. Um, and well, you got any? I'm just gonna go right into it. I'm already on a roll. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I'm not gonna jump in and interrupt, even though that's exactly what I'm doing.
yeah, well, it's okay because like Pulpit is basically, I asked myself the question, what would it look like if somebody had superpowers and faith? Um, because you look at a character like, say, Superman, and you're like, well, what is that dude praying for? He can, punt the moon. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like hear an ant fart. Like what is that? What does his faith journey look like? But on top of which, to go hand in hand with that, what does it look like in a real sense? You know what I'm saying? When
Yep.
you're in situations where it's like kill or be killed, when you're in situations where what the right thing to do is not necessarily crystal clear all the time. Um, those sorts of things, real world problems, like real scenarios that you fall into. And that's basically where Pulpit and Silas Santos came to be, and the characters that expanded out from that.
That's awesome. Yeah, having and Pulpit is the one. You've got the ash can up on Gumroad, correct?
Yes, Gumroad and Global Comics. You can find it at both. There should be some links. It is awesome. You should check it out and tell all your friends. And it's very affordable. It's like $2, $3, something like that, like $2. I forget exactly because I changed the prices recently. I dropped them. So let's just say $2. If it's not, I'll fix it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of wanted to just do it, just pure DIY grassroots. I'm sure at some point, I'll do like a full Kickstarter or Fund My Comic or something like that. Shout out to Luke and the boys at Fund My Comic. And do like a full color campaign, print, all that good stuff. But I just wanted to just do it. The hardest step of any journey is to take that first step. Yep. So I got a story. I made it legible. I made it a thing. So I was like, let's just let it rip and see what happens. That's how they used to do it. Why not?
Yeah. I was so related, and this is something that has stuck with me, and I'm going to cheat. I need to normalize like taking notes and looking at notes on my computer here. So I'm not ignoring you, but so we were at Supernatural Con. With my wife loves the show, like Jensen Ackles is her, just like, oh, and which is fine. I get it. He's a handsome man. So I can't fault her for it. So, but like, I've never watched the show. I've seen one episode, and it was the Scooby-Doo episode because they get sucked into the cartoon.
I've actually seen that one. I've only seen a handful of episodes of Supernatural, but that's one I have seen.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was the one that she was like, if you're going to watch anyone, you have to watch the Scooby episode. And I was like, okay. So I gave her that. But going into the con, I didn't know who anybody was. I was just like, I'm here to support you. Like, you wanted this thing. I don't want you driving to Columbus and doing this thing alone. Let's roll. Like, I can be a fanboy too. So as they were like, a lot of the cast came out and had panels and stuff like that. And Mark Shepard, I forget what his character name is. He doesn't come in, I guess, until like the 5th season. But he started and he was talking, and his first like 20 minutes was in character. And so he was like being rude and a jerk. And I have a black sense of humor. So I was laughing. Like he already had me with the comedy bit. But a guy got up and he was like, hey, I'm in film school. And like, what advice, having been in the industry and done all the things, like, what advice would you give me? And before he could finish the question, he was like, make your film. Like, just make it. He said, talking about it will get you nowhere. Follow your heart, follow your passion, and see where it'll take you. You're not going to learn anything talking. You're going to learn doing. And I was just like, I was so floored by how easily he just said that I was like, that's not just about movies. Like, that's about all the things. Like, that's the spirit of me starting this show, was like, this is what I want to do. So I'm just going to do it. And like, that's the heart of the DIY thing, is to just do it. So the fact that you were like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'll figure out where it's going and long-term stuff later. Like, I got to do this thing now. And so not like, I feel like there's that fear of stepping out.
Yes.
That can be cause anxiety, and just like the fear of failure creeps in, and all of these things, and everybody telling you how challenging it's going to be and whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it's so rewarding if you just take that first step, because you never know what momentum you're going to have after that first step. So
and the thing that I got similar advice actually, and basically what they said, it was a comic that you're 75% satisfied with and is out there is better than one that you're like 100% with and you've never released, never gets actually finished. Then you're in the ether. You know what I'm saying? You don't know where you need to improve. You don't know where your narrative is weak. You don't know where what the fans will say, or like what doors might be opened. You know, there's some things that I've gotten to do just in the last couple months that I had like no idea that would be something I would enjoy. One of the things is I've been doing collaborating with a brother named Tony and his game Dystopian Dawn. So it's like, rolling D20s, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And I've been doing, some character art, some player manuals, and just a lot of cool stuff, which he's probably going to kill me for saying this, but we're also going to be possibly working on something closer to comic books related to Dystopian Dawn.
Hey.
So, not telling anybody I told you that. But just seeing like the different places, the different people that I have other things brewing with, that all came from just saying, you know what, I'm just gonna let it rip and see what happens.
Yeah.
You don't know, like, Ecclesiastes says to sow with the left hand and the right, because you don't know which one will be blessed, right? Or both alike will be good.
Yeah.
And that's creating media is the same way. I think we're in a renaissance almost, I would say, of independent media, whether it's gaming, tabletop gaming, comic books, movies, all this stuff that is way more accessible now than it's ever been. And I don't want to turn this into like a whining about the mainstream kind of thing, but there's a lot of discourse about the current course of certain IPs. And
Yeah.
my thing is, be the change you want to see, right? That's my approach to ministry. That's my approach to being a Christian. That's my approach to, being a dad, like, and all that stuff. So why wouldn't I have that same attitude towards comic books and indie gaming and everything else? Like, I can spend hours on end on the internet belly aching and drama farming because I don't like what Star Wars is doing or whatever. And I say that, I do, but at the same time, I could also be talking about indie books that are awesome and spending my time not hate reading and all that other stuff. So I think that's another part of what Bloodbot Comics brings to the table is the focus isn't on, trying to like own the libs or whatever people assume that me being a more conservative Christian type person is going to be, which I guess that's kind of a misdirect, because I still listen to like Christian hip hop and stuff and like heavy metal. So it's like, do I really count if I listen to Diamonds to Dust? I don't know. Fundamentalist, but I think that in some ways that'll get you. They get whatever though. I'll just make both sides of the fence mad today.
Yeah, equal opportunity, right?
There you go. There you go. Whatever. Until a King James fan will be okay with me.
Right. Like, and that's part of finding like freedom through salvation is like, and this is something that I like need to be more intentional about, and also that I want to thank you about, because you're unashamedly Christian, and there are so many people that like, and like, some people would see that as a diss, but like, that's mad respect behind it, because so many other people, myself included, are like, I don't really know if I can say that because like people are gonna explode and it's just like, yeah, but my faith should be like, they were just talking about it this weekend at church of like, are you doing godly things, or are you trying to get your things more in line with God? And basically, like, that's a very rough paraphrasing, but it was just like, there are so many people that I know that say that they're Christian that are only caught up in doing Christian things instead of like, hey, what's the most recent Bible verse that you read that you just like, what are you chewing on? Like, what's the thing? Like, how's your prayer life right now? They're like, oh, I mean, this is fine, but like, I did this thing. And it's like, okay, all right.
Yeah. And, and that's an interesting pivot, because that's actually something I spend a lot of time talking to my son about, because he's rolling up on 12. Yeah. He's already like wanting to be in the ministry, dad's a preacher, so he wants to be a preacher, all that good stuff. But one of the failings, I think, that Western Christianity has is we spend a lot of time not being the church, but talking about being the church. We have we spend a lot of time kind of chasing our tails, because if we spent more time, if we spent an equal balance of being known for what we're doing as opposed to just like what we're against. And like, it's no different than like rage baiting on the internet. If like the only time you talk about Jesus is when you're telling somebody that they're not good enough for them, or you know, like your Theo bros that will, like say like somebody like Russell Brand will get interested in Jesus, and you know he'll say something about it, and they're like, well, that's not the proper doctrine, you know, and it's like, well, dude, what does Romans 10:13 say? For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, right?
Yep.
Ephesians chapter 2 tells us that we're saved by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. And we forget that. And we also forget that God promised Abram before he was even Abraham that he would make many nations of one blood. Well, that blood's Jesus, for one. And two, like what you do, I'm not called to do that. You're right. And what I do, you're not called to do that. And the thing is that that's how we build the kingdom. That's how people go, you know, maybe there's something real. Like there's a difference in them. There's a joy in them that I don't quite have. There's a sense of unity in them that I don't quite have. And I think a lot of us, when we talk about, like me in particular, I don't shy away from the fact that I'm an independent fundamental Baptist, right? If you Google the IFB, you'll probably get a lot of nonsense because that's just how it is. But what is the fundamentals? That Jesus died, was buried, and rose again, so that all who believe will be saved. That he was born of a virgin. That we serve a triune God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, right? All those things don't change. That's the actual fundamentals of the faith, not do you have a hard part? Do you have the same, Buddy Holly glasses as Hiles did? Do you always make sure that you wear a white shirt when you preach? You know what I'm saying? Like all that wild stuff that we spend, it's what the Bible calls unfruitful works of darkness, in my opinion. I mean, not in my opinion, that's just what the Bible says. So when we focus on all that crap, that's what gives us on the other end of it, like this hesitation, because you're like, well, if I attach that label of Christian, then, you know, like the Benny Hinn's and your all that kind of stuff, that people are just like, I have no desire to have any of that hogwash in my life. That's the things that they think of, you know. Literally just a couple days ago, one of my friends here in Detroit that I just recently reconnected with, that was like a whole conversation we had to have. Is that, you know, your Joel Osteen and all that looking pretty on Sunday, but living like hell Monday through Saturday. That's not what it's about, man. I would rather have imperfect people who own that they're imperfect, but are trying to live, to chase after something better, than to just have a form of godliness and deny the power thereof because you look the part, you know?
Right.
It's wild. It's wild stuff, but that's kind of, as a culture, that's kind of, you know, and that whole vibe, that's kind of what I wanted to bleed into the book, you know. The main conflict is Silas, you know, he's a retired superhero. At the end of the first issue, you get kind of more of some hints on why that might be. But the main conflict is between him and Klaus, aka Crimson Claw. You know, he's back as a civilian, kind of a new age guru type. That was intentional, so y'all can be mad at you, but it's whatever. There ain't no spiritual power in rocks and grass. That's all the creation. You got to worship the creator, you feel? But that's fun. So anyway, so that's kind of the main conflict, is that, you know, this old villain that he thought was dealt with is back, and now he has to deal with the consequences of, you know, he told everybody that he was done for, like that Claw was taken care of, don't worry about it. The insinuation is that, you know, he was dealt with, right? And that's something that we explore in the book, and that's something that I'm going to explore more in the second issue. So you're like, well, for one, why is this dude, like, he peed a little bit when he figured out that the Claw was back? Why? Right? That's a thing. To what did he do that has not just Silas Santos, aka Power Star, like up in arms that he's returned, some of the other characters, some of the other heroes, Rolling Thunder and Riveter in particular. Why are they so angry when Silas is like, actually Claw is back? Like, what actually occurred to have such just an animosity, not just towards Claw, but towards Silas himself. And those were things that I wanted to layer to just get some grittiness, some realism to what it would be like to try to, on one hand, be you have this whole life, all of these experiences, all of these triumphs as a superhero that you're not ashamed of, but in order to do this other thing that you've been called to do, to pastor a flock, to be faithful to the work of God, you can't really do both. So you've chosen to go this route. Well, one of the things that we'll explore more too is what was the event that made that happen. Now, was it his dealings with Claw, or was it something else? Right? We'll see. Why is Rolling Thunder? I mean, at one point you got a big old panel of him just calling Silas a liar, and that I went full Jack Kirby manga on it and made that like the so like why is Rolling Thunder? Why is Edsel so mad? Like he just instantly livid when he finds out this dude's still alive. Well, we get more into that too, and that's just kind of the stuff that I want to do. Because like with, say, I don't know, I hate to pick on Bible Man because maybe one day I'll get to do like a gritty reboot of it, but like, I'm just kidding. We don't want to be partially gritty. I don't want to go full edgelord there, but but the thing is that's the kind of questions that people shy away from. We live in 2024. It's not easy to have the fine balance of being a sound Christian, but also not being a turd and like just being honest. Yeah. One of the I praise God for it now. One of the things that landed me at the church that I'm at now is really just talking with the people and seeing that they are godly, that there's not any compromise, that there's, all that good stuff. But at the same time, like me and my boys, when we have a prayer meeting or whatever, like we're talking about real stuff, we're not just fronting in front of each other because we want to make sure we look good. And that kind of, all these things are things that I wanted reflected in my art, because there's not a lot of people in these spaces who are willing to say like, look, you might be struggling with drugs or alcohol or unbelief or just mad that you can't afford groceries or whatever you're going through. But like, that's the point. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to encounter perfect people anywhere. And that taking away that mask and letting people see what it actually means to walk in faith is a big part of what I wanted to do with this book.
Yeah. So I find the balance between like staying authentic and I'm hoping that you can correct me, that like his strength is shown in our weakness. Mm-hmm. Like there was a sermon before I left working for the church that I was at here in Cincinnati, that like the pastor spent the entire service talking about just that idea of like the whole point is to be authentic. Like the whole point is, as a Christian, is we're not perfect. Like if we were, we wouldn't need to be saved. And that's the whole point of the relationship.
Yeah.
And like the whole reason that Christ died is because like he had to say, like, that's the point.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up, but this is the thing about that too. Is like like without getting too much in detail, like, but when we moved, there was some hurt involved in that, right? And but the thing about it that I had to remind myself was that when you really think about the concept of salvation, this is how serious this is. I mean, other than, the obvious that it's life and death and, hell, heaven, eternity. Well, Jesus Christ was not just the Son of God, but he was also God the Son. So when he created us and gave us free will, eventually things came to a place where he said, all right, listen, here's the deal. They do not have it in them to have enough to act right, to where even if like I killed them in like a 5-minute window where like they just were sinless and perfect, and I was like, nope, I got to just take you home right now or you're going to screw up in 5 minutes. We don't even have it in us to act right that long. Yeah. Right. So much to the point where God said, all right, listen, if I do not make a way for them, even though I gave them free will to act right, I gave them the law's still holy, right, and all that good stuff. it's impossible. They're not going to do it, right? So I'm going to pay the penalty for them. I'm going to pay the price for them that that they are unable to pay. But when you actually think about the ramifications of that, when people say things like, well, I don't go to church because hypocrites are there, or I don't go to church because, I was church hurt. And like, listen, I got some doozies already on that one, right? I've been in the ministry for 5 years now and in church for almost 8. So I've seen some things and so on and so forth. So we can talk about that part all day.
Right.
Um, but that's the point, is that, yeah, that's what you're going to find just like anywhere else.
Yeah.
But weirdly, church is the only place where that's like acceptable to apply that logic, to not do it anymore. Like if I just quit working because I was like, well, I don't want to be around hypocrites and liars and all this other stuff. Well, guess what? I'd be broken on the street, starving to death in no time.
Yep.
Right. If, you couldn't even walk into Walmart if that was your attitude towards everything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But for some reason, that's just the one sphere that we've made it acceptable. It's wild stuff.
And the thing is, like, the majority, I would say, if you went to Walmart and you asked everybody working at Walmart, like, hey, how many of you are like broken people and you're sinners and you're like, that you can't live life right on your own, that like you like, how many would you say that? There might be like 4 or 5. If you ask the same question with the same number of people in a church, there would be like the numbers would flip. And I think that difference is people in church know, like, I can't do this alone. Like, I need what God offers.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. And from the outside, like, I totally get it. I've been through, there's a whole separate conversation that wouldn't take place on a punk rock comic show about just a lot of the nonsense that, like we both have probably dealt with personally that have contributed to our stories.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But like, those aren't the things that define us. Like, being brothers in Christ is what defines us. And how do you navigate the balance between, I want to make comics that are authentic and not super cheesy and not Bible man, but like also I want to make good superhero comic. Like, how do you, is there tension for you, or does that come naturally for you as you're creating?
In some ways it's a little bit of both. Like there's certain things where when, all right, like for example, the follow-up that I did a little bit of a teaser, some teaser posts, and I made an announcement on Global Comics. I'm gonna have another book with the working title is Templar Bars, right? And I'm gonna probably change that to like Antioch Mixtape or something. I don't know. It's gonna be like a hip hop Christian. I'm gonna mush it together. But anyway, the point is with that one, it's gonna be about a young man from Detroit. Pretty much all my books are probably gonna have that be a central theme, but it's gonna very much look like what that means to be a young black man in like 1990s Detroit. Like, so it's not going to be pretty, and he's not going to be a holy roller, and there might be like baby mama drama, and there might be all these other things. But the where the balance comes in is you have to just write the story and then take a step back and say, okay, now am I saying things for shock value? Am I actually unintentionally glorifying sin? And even with things that you would think that wouldn't be an issue, like the first comic project I ever did was I started on doing like a comic book version of the King James, but is accurate to form as possible. So for like example, Eve has fruit, but it's like an undescript fruit, because most people assume that she had an apple, and it's like, well, if you go back and read Genesis, there's nowhere in there
it doesn't mention it
that says that, or they leave out that like the serpent used to have limbs. So I included that too. But when I was drawing Eve, I had to like step back and go, okay, well, how am I going to draw Eve? Because up until the fall, they didn't wear clothes. So that's like the kind of things where you go, okay, how do I um, how do I find a proper balance? What techniques can I use to like keep her modest, but like not blatantly so,
Yeah.
so that you know what I'm saying. So it is kind of like a fine line that you just have to like navigate and sometimes get like some other eyes on and um, just take the feedback and pray about it and that's it. And really, so I guess the short answer is a lot of prayer and trial and error,
Yeah.
and then self reflection, right? Like, what am I when I even with pulpit, right? Like when I include violence in that, am I doing it just for the sake of violence, or am I doing it because it's required in storytelling? It's required in a story about heroes that there's going to be conflict. Um, One of the things that brings the conflict of Power Star and Claw to a head is that he actually starts using kids as goons. I probably spoiler alert, right? So that's one of the big like dun 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 moments in the thing. And when I was writing that, I did like it took me a little while. Like I was stuck on that one particular point for a couple weeks because I'm like, this is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
Uh, like pretty much regardless of what your faith system belief is, you can your faith beliefs, whatever your faith system is, we can all pretty much agree that there's like three categories that you leave alone when it comes to violence, and that's like old people, kids, and like women, right?
Yeah.
So to bust that wide open on the very first issue, I was like, there has to be a point to it, which
Yeah.
is ties into some stuff I won't spoil that we get revealed later on in the same issue. Um, but and then I'll extrapolate more on that and the upcoming expansion, so to speak. So yeah, it's really just examining what is the purpose of why I'm doing this.
Mm.
That's kind of, you pray about it and then ask yourself, what is the purpose of what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And then when you distill that down, then you can kind of stay on the right track as far as the balance goes.
So when, yeah, no, I, it does, it does. You mentioned that like getting feedback on it, and as you're working through that process, like what does that look like for you? Are you taking that to, like, do you have a community that's specifically for like creators that you look up to, that you work with, that are close to you? Is it like
I have a
where
bit of
do,
I have a bit of a mixed bag.
okay.
There's like some other preachers and stuff that I've kind of run the idea by. Some of them get it, some of them don't. You got to do the kid test. So like I mentioned, I have two kids. My youngest, he still lives with us. My daughter, she's almost 19, so she's got her own thing going on.
Yep.
But ran it by them like first, and when they're like, okay, this is cool, next time you need to do this more, or like when I was designing the characters,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe that's not so cool, that name isn't as cool as it could be, that kind of stuff. And then like my wife and a couple of family members like that just aren't into like comic books or anything at all, like you run it by them, and well, my wife's kind of, but you run it by them and just kind of see what their feedback is in contrast to like other creators, preachers that I know that are kind of driving that same balance of being like a Star Wars fan but also like whatever. And then from there you just kind of just compile it all together and you go, okay, so here's a common thread. This was cool, this was not cool,
Yeah.
this needs more explanation, this needs to be clearer, and then smash it all together to have your final product.
Okay, so you just like dump everything into a blender and
More or
then
less, yeah,
leave the lid off, hit the blend, and just catch everything on the page, and then you have a comic. That's
basically.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, like the thing too is like I already kind of knew that would be the process because I have a lot of different threads that I weeded together to make like just the characters themselves. Like for example, Rolling Thunder. I'll give you behind the scenes info on that dude. I wanted like almost like a Tony Stark character, but I didn't want to just have like another dude in a robot suit, which is why he has like the big like manga mech looking suit going on. almost like Mega Man X Ride Armor. So that's like, just a bit of my background because I'm big into manga and stuff, as well as Western comics. But I also, as far as like the character himself, his name's Edsel Ball. Well, where did I get that name from? Edsel Ford and Ed Blue. I just kind of mashed them together. So it was like my Detroit heritage, a preacher I really look up to, and then drizzle some manga and stuff on top of it, and boom. So I kind of knew going into it that I was going to be mixing a lot of stuff. So that's why it kind of helps to have a wide range of feedback to see what lands. And, sometimes like my wife will, find stuff that like the kids definitely aren't thinking about because they're like, she's like, oh, that's, you got that from so-and-so, or you said that line, or you got that line, you heard of that from, this message we heard in wherever, so stuff like that. A lot of Easter eggs and threads to unwind to get all of it. Like Silas, for example, I was going to name him Silas Sandoval. So like Silas, young man, young preacher from the Bible, and then Sandoval, like Sonny Sandoval from POD. But then I was like, I don't know that dude, so I don't know if that would be okay. So I just shifted to Santos because I was like, it's close enough.
Yeah, after you told me that, I was like, POD, man. And I like immediately pulled out my Elements of Southtown CD album.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to listen to this. Oh, crap. Where's the CD player?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is like that, around when I was doing some research and stuff for this particular book, that was like the first time I'd actually listened to him in a really long time. And like when I was like lost and stuff and I was like in high school, I was such an edgelord dude. Like I had dreads down to my butt and everything. And, like I didn't mess with POD or like a lot of bands that I look back now and I'm like, oh, that's just because I was just disgruntled and lost and just pissy. And there's nothing wrong with anything. Like their music's actually really good. Their bass lines are insanely good. Yeah. It was just, I was all in spiritual darkness. So I was like, get that out of my face, bro. I'm too metal for one hand, all that nonsense. Yep. And then you like listen to stuff that I used to listen to, and I'm like, well, no wonder I was such a crab all the time. I'm over here listening to like what could be better than a swan dive into the asphalt, like, no shade, head PE, like don't
you just make a head PE reference. Yes. I used to listen to them cutting my grass because that CD was the exact amount of time that it would take me to cut the yard. So I would I knew track by track where I should be. And if I was just like taking my time or if I was hustling based on the timing of that CD.
Yeah. Broke.
Also in my very angry.
Broke. Yeah. Man. Then, like when you listen, like when you go back now, I mean, honestly, I don't do any of this stuff now, but like, yeah, you're like, well, no wonder I was crabby all the time. Like it was this crap that I'm putting in my brain. No shade, right? Well, actually, I can say that. I don't care. That just means they'll tell more people about it. But
right, yeah.
But there you go. But anyway, though, yeah. So
I mean, that goes back to the like be the change and be the positivity that you want to see. Yeah. And I know for people that might be watching this that have also watched other stuff, I think I've talked about it on like probably 30% of my interviews where it's like there's enough discord that's out there that is just like the hate reading and like the hate watching of show just to complain about it. And like I just fundamentally don't understand like how dark of a place these people have to be in to like that's their whole intent is I'm gonna watch this thing and I'm gonna complain about it, and like I just don't get it.
And it's like you don't have like there's such a wide variety of media out there that you could just not do that. Like you know what I'm saying? Like you could literally just not do that. Like let's say like music wise or whatever. If you're not happy with mainstream music, then get on the internet and do a little bit of digging. I like music of all genres, like Christian, like as long as it's some glorifying God, then I'm probably bumping it. Like if you get in my car, there's an equal chance that you're going to hear like Amazing Grace and like the Precious Heart album from Al Green, but also like a bunch of stuff from the Ellis family. And then like, No Big Deal and John Keith, and then back to like, I don't know, I'll Fly Away or something. So like there's a smorgasbord of good entertainment options out there. Like just go out and get some. You know, with comics, man, we got what Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Fund My Comic, Global Comics is watching them blow up over the last couple of years has been amazing. You know, Drive Through Comics is another one that's just like a digital warehouse of books. Indie Planet. I mean, there's so many options to discover new media out there that I just can't fathom. Just, I mean, I guess I can, because if you don't got the love of God in you, and you just probably ain't got no love really at the end of the day. It's fleeting at best. And it's sad, you know, and that's like another realm of not so much traditional evangelism, but still just reminding people that, hey, your time here is finite, eternity is forever, but you don't have to spend this half of it just mad all the time. Right. You can do something that means something with what time you've been given. You know, they say that life is short, and sometimes that's true. Most of the time that's true. But when you're making jacked up decisions and when you're just mad 24/7, your days are long, boy. They are long. Okay. You do not buy that life is short, because you're miserable every second, and there's freedom from that misery. And even after salvation, even after you've called upon the name of the Lord, you gotten born again, even after that, there's people that still fall into those traps. You know, the flesh doesn't forget, man. It loves that old timey sin. So you know, I'm not saying Christians are opposed or misery proof, but like, it's what you do with your days. You can't just be well, let me put it this way. For most people, let's say they go to Sunday school, Sunday morning church, probably not Sunday evening, but like Wednesday. So at best, you're getting like 3 to 4 hours of preaching to you. There's like 168 hours in a week. So you do the math on what you're feeding into yourself, right? And it's no different on whether or not you're in prayer and you're in Bible and all that good stuff every day. If you're feeding yourself a bunch of nonsense like hate reading and hate watching and all that other stuff, like, do something else. Literally just do something else and tell people about it. That's, you know what's the best discourse ever? When like you and a homie go, I found this book and I think it's the best book of 2024. And you go, nope, I found this one and I'm pretty sure I'm right. Right. And you can actually like talk about comics and stuff, man. Like I threw up a poll the other day just to see what the outcome would be on what Daniel Warren Johnson book would be better, whether it would be Do a Power Bomb or Murder Falcon. And I just finished Murder Falcon yesterday, actually. It was my first time actually reading the whole thing through, and I was like, this slaps. This just goes hard. So I'm going to have to read it and all the way through just to see if the results were correct. Right. You can follow me on Twitter and find out or X now, whatever we want to call
Twitter.
it.
It's Twitter.
And see how that turned out. But yeah, there's so much fun, man, to be had, to just enjoy comics and gaming and all this other stuff for what it is, and not spend your time just circling the drain on nonsense. And that's that, to tie that back into pulpit, because I got to keep plugging my stuff, right?
That's right.
And so that's another part of it too. So when we introduce some other characters, I think that how you spend your free time and how you spend your days, just period, is going to be another thing that I tackle, because with each character we introduce, I do want to examine a different avenue of life. For example, at some point, Rolling Thunder and Riveter will have a bit more of a focus, like, where did he get the means to make the mech suit? What is it made out of? Why is she called Riveter? Like, why is somebody who in their private life is pretty much a Proverbs 31 super traditional woman, but like her superhero persona is pretty much Rosie the Riveter, but with
Mm.
like a giant bionic arm that, spoiler alert, is going to do cool stuff. Um, I kind of stole that idea from Bionic Commando too. Just
Mm.
point blank. If you play Marvel vs. Capcom 3, then you'll get some of the stuff that you're gonna see in the follow up to the Ash Can. Um, but yeah, that's another thing, is just examining like daily life, like what daily life is like from different aspects of Christianity, not just like Silas is a pastor, so that's you got your ministry angle covered there.
Yep.
But then you have like Rolling Thunder, who's like your more Sunday morning only kind of believer. And not everybody that's going to be in the book is going to necessarily be a Christian, because that's not accurate, right?
Right.
Like I have most of the people that I spend time with outside of work are Christians. They're in some form of ministry, so on and so forth. But not everybody I know is a Christian, and I'm working on them. So, but like you can't, like, if we're being realistic, there's a difference between biblical separation and well, there's no such thing as biblical isolation, but there is a difference in biblical separation. So, going back to what I was saying about fundamentalism, one of the things that gets conflated is those two concepts, right?
Mm.
Like people should know that you're saved by your demeanor, by your conversation, the things that's on your mind, what your small talk's about, what your thoughts are about. So they should be able to identify without you having to wave a flag saying that you're saved, that there's something different about you.
Yeah.
That's what the Bible says, right? Not like don't associate with anybody who's not exactly like you. You'll never find two people whose like theology is exactly the same. You'll never
Right.
find two people who are in 100% agreement on like every single thing. So where we get like, I don't know, some of the ideas, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not gonna like start hanging out in like bars and stuff and being like I'm trying to win them. Like that's kind of nutty.
I'm gonna
But
get you.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. Like, that's not exactly, you know what I'm saying. Like you're not gonna open a trap house for Jesus. Like there's still a standard of how you should compose yourself and behave and all that good stuff. But there's like a common sense element too, and that's something that I want to weave in. So like with Riveter, Rolling Thunder, like what they are, what they're like, what their family life is like, um, maybe even slight spoiler, what some of the people who are in Silas's congregation, or
Mm.
Tori from the other book, Templar, when I start weaving threads between the two, because they are going to be in a shared universe going forward. Everything I release is going to have some kind of tie back together. It might not always be readily, super obvious, but I think that's one of the coolest things about indie comics is people weaving their own worlds and just really going for it. So that will be another, daily aspect of just what it looks like to kind of look at the world outside your window and say, yeah, but what if I could fly, right? And
Yep.
yeah, so I think that'll be another thing that people will enjoy going through pulpit, aside from like people getting punched in the face and lasers and mechs and well, never mind. I'm not gonna spoil too much.
There you go. Yeah, you got to keep some of it tight-lipped, because
Yeah,
we're going to entice them to go to Gumroad and buy the book so that they can support the book, so that you continue making, because it's very apparent that you have plenty more planned for Pulpit.
yes,
So I'm curious, when you write, is it like, do you have all of the ideas and then you start fleshing it out and you're like, okay, this will be an issue, this will be an issue? Or is it like, I want to write this, I want to focus on this issue. And then as you're writing that, or even after, you're like, ooh, but I can do this and I want to talk about that. Like with Riveter, like, did
yeah.
you know when you first included her in this one where you wanted to take her in future stories?
No, not particularly. Because she kind of herself in Rolling Thunder under, they kind of took lives of their own. At first, I just thought they were cool names, just point blank. The bionic arm and all that other stuff kind of came later too. But when I first started, I just had the core concept of Silas, and he had a different name, and what I wanted to do is just telling a honest story about what it would be like for a man in ministry to just have powers and have to navigate the waters on being a good Christian, but also making those hard calls that all those things require. So that was like the core. And then from there, it just kind of like layers got added on. Like, okay, well, I didn't want to put too many things into Silas to where he wasn't a person, right? Like, I didn't want to make like a Christian Captain America where he's just soapboxing 24/7. I want the reader to be able to see Christian principle, biblical principle applied organically as you go. Because that's always what the problem with like Bible Man is, that like, he's like fighting a bad guy and then he's like, oh, but also, and then he like goes into like a whole PSA about why you should brush your teeth or you're going to go to hell. And it's like, that ain't winning them, Chief. That ain't doing it. Like,
that's not it, man.
That ain't the vibe, bro. That is not the vibe. So, but as that expanded and I started to look at some of the men and women of faith that influenced, my journey, and other creators like, Akira Toriyama, Jack Kirby, EJ Pace, like just different people that influenced my style. Mm-hmm. What about them influenced me? Those things started to branch out into other ideas. And that's how I ended up with doing this particular book for the number one, like the first release of Bloodbot Comics. Because originally I was going to do like my own anthology where I had 7 stories and just did like 7 pages per story, 7 pages per story, and then flushed it out so that I could, not have printers try to fist fight me because I'm trying to, do a 49-page book, which isn't viable. Right. So from there, I was like, no, let's focus on this one. And then it kind of spiderwebbed out to other books. Like I kind of let the cat out of the bag. So I do have like in total, like I would say probably 10 titles that I'm working on putting together, not counting like any collaborations with anybody or anything like that. But the core of them was one idea that I kind of hammered down. And then the more I hammered down Pulpit, the more it grew to push out the other ones a little bit. Okay. And that's why the first book is just Pulpit rather than the Bloodbot anthology, which I guess I'll probably end up still doing because why not?
Right. Just add some extra pages of artwork or something in the end and like an intro letter, and you'll get to because books, what I've learned through doing this, I think it was Justin Belmont that said like when you're printing a book, it's got to be in multiples of 4. Mm-hmm. Because of the page counts and stuff. So if you're going to have 49, then whatever the next one, 53? No, 52.
52, yeah.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, math. Yeah.
You're right.
So that's, right. Are you proud of me yet, Mrs. Cash? I got it right. She was legit my 7th grade math teacher. No. Back in good old Catholic school. Okay, so I want to do some quick hits. This is a new thing that I'm trying. It might be terrible. It might be really fun.
Let's do it.
All right, so best pizza place in Detroit. Go.
Best pizza place in Detroit, BC's Pizza on 4th Street in Seacott. Their phone number there is 388-3888. You should go. Best super sticks ever, too. Cheese sticks, best of all time.
I love cheese sticks. Best Red Wings player.
That's hard.
I knew it was
for sure. First, he's like literally was like the Captain America of the team for like ages, and then now he's back and he's making boss moves. We got Kane, Tarasenko, boy,
No.
Iserman. Listen, Iserman's popping off with it, son. I was like,
What?
wild, son. I was because everybody was mad at him for getting rid of Wallman, right? And I'm like, but then I was like, nah, we gotta trust the we gotta trust him. If he could turn Tampa into a franchise, we gotta trust, right? And then boom,
Yep.
he's like, boom, Kane, man. So yeah, I gotta go Iserman.
Okay.
I got a couple other ones. Like Bob Probert was my dude. He was like the goon of goons. Iowa Datsuk, the Magic Man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mike Vernon, literally. Like I'm pretty sure that dude has spider sense in real life. Like ain't nobody goalieing like that dude. But gotta go with Iserman above all.
Okay.
He's the guy.
Have you walked down 8 Mile?
Yes, I was literally just there like 2 or 3 days ago doing all. Yeah. I'll send you a screenshot of the shot I sent my daughter. I sent her a picture of like the street sign on 8 Mile. And it was like when you come to 8 Mile and nobody offers you mom spaghetti, and it's just like me like she died. She's like, what are you doing over there? I'm like,
when we were there, mom spaghetti, like their hours are so limited that like by the time I was like, well, I'm not gonna eat spaghetti at like 10:45 in the morning. Like, who does that? Because that was the only time that we had that like they were open, that we didn't have something planned. So I was like, we'll just hit it next time. Like, we're gonna be back. It's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's so strange, but at the same time, bless them for trying and just doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's such a ridiculous concept that they're like, what if we just turn this meme into a restaurant? And they're thriving, man. They're thriving and surviving. So more power to them.
I hear their meatballs are good. So I mean,
yeah. Next time you come to town, I'll have to go.
Perfect. Speaking of 8 Mile, have you ever been to a show similar to the final rap battle where it's like in a basement? I just imagine
like the Shelter. Yeah. It's over at I think it's 413 Congress or 4th, I don't remember, but Congress Street where they film that. Like, yeah, I've been there. Like you can just go. Like they have shows there all the time. So like that's a real like that scenario, you know, obviously was made up for the movie, but like literally going down there for like rap battles and like, you know, or like punk shows and whatever. Like I met Danny Filth actually from Cradle of Filth in that same basement where like because this was like a long time ago when I was you know, all into like secular music and stuff. I did music journalism for a while for a publication called Blood Rock Media. Okay. And like he was like down there hanging out, and they had like the main floor is called St. Andrew's Hall, and the Shelter is just the basement of it. And he was just chilling. I was like, hey, can I get a word real quick? And yeah, he's like this tall in real life.
Isn't it weird?
No disrespect. No disrespect.
It's crazy. Cool. Like when you meet people, because like having worked in broadcasting for like 15 years, I have been to more shows than I can remember. And I've met more bands and stuff and like I swear I'm not trying to flex because I hate people that do that. But like there are people that I have met that when I meet them, I'm like, oh, how you're very different than the persona that you put out like on stage and like on posters. And so you always look, and then I meet you and you're like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, no, it's really good to meet you. Yeah, okay. Can I just grab a water? Is that? And it's like, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. The funny thing is like, there's a lot of, there's some hardcore preachers that are like that too, man. Like, I probably shouldn't say I'm gonna anyway. Like Tony Hudson's one of those cats where he's like, you know, like in the independent Baptist circles, he's like the dude, but he's like this super humble. Like he just got like an air of authority about him, but he's just a very chill dude. Like he's #goals.
Got it.
Yeah. It is always weird. Like when you get to like meet your heroes and stuff, but it's like in a good way, you know? So,
yeah. Cause I've heard the like complete sidebar, but we're live. I was at the Cincinnati Expo like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was when Stan Lee was there, and I got him to sign this X-Men book, which is a reprinting of X-Men #4 with the Brotherhood of Mutants and Magneto looking over. And like I only waited like 3.5 hours in line to meet him and like get him to sign the book. His team were efficient. And like I was talking to one of the buddies that I had met, and like he's a guy that was working a con. He was full of food puns, and shout out to JR Mounts. And like he just sold me. Like I was rolling, just talking to him, and I was like doing the thing. I was like, wow, we just got here. Like I got to
Yeah.
bounce around, see what else is going on. We got like 2 tables away, and I was still laughing, and I was like, no, I got to go give that money right now. Like he just won. He had a bowling shirt that had cheetah prints on it, and I was like, dude, I don't care. Like, this is the look, man. Like, you've nailed it. And I was like, I gotta buy all of your books. Like, how much for all of them? And he was like, seriously? I was like, yeah, no, 100%. But I was telling him, like, yeah, I met Stan Lee, and I had this whole speech prepared of like what the X-Men meant to me growing up and why it's been so influential and like all of these things. And I knew I needed to rehearse it because I was only getting it like 30 seconds. And I got in front of him. All of it left my brain. And all I did was, thank you for the X-Men. What am I doing? Like, the immediate, like, that's what you say to the man? And
yeah,
the guy next to him was like, bro, he didn't hear you. Hey, this guy just thanked you for the X-Men. And he, like, put down his Sharpie and, like, looked at me. He was like, whoa, I wrote them just for you. And I was like, you did? And his handler was like, okay, move along. We got other people.
Yeah.
And so I had this great moment, and I was telling this to JR, and he was like, see, I got to meet, and I'm not going to say his name because I believe in positivity, but he was like, I met this guy, and I just told him, like, I really, he was influential on my career and why I got into comics and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And he just like shut him down and was like, yeah, cool, you're going to buy something? Or like, what's like, didn't want to engage with him as a fan, didn't want to hear about any of the positive stuff, was just there for the transaction. And he was like, I hear don't meet your heroes. And I was like, yeah, but I did. And like, he wrote the X-Men for me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I just haven't had that experience yet. Like,
so I went to Motor City Comic Con just recently, and I definitely had literally both sides of that experience in the exact same con. Okay. I'm not gonna won't say names because I probably shouldn't even have said what con I went to because you could probably figure it out, or at least partially. But like I met Bart Sears, he was really cool. That was awesome. Like, I love his EXO Turok. Well, Valiant Boys. Hashtag Valiant.
Sure do.
And then Jason Moore was an absolute blessing. Yeah. He actually kept the nerd swag. Oh, hold on. Ah.
Hey.
All right. There. So I knew, I was like, I know there's something Valiant related. There's an indie book over here somewhere if I reach for it. But yeah, so all those dudes were really cool. Jason Moore is really cool. And then there was like one or two where I was like, I'm kind of mad that I knew you were here and I brought stuff for you to sign, and I didn't know that like I had no idea Bart Sears was gonna be there, or I would have brought like a bunch of EXO stuff and been like, you're gonna sign all of it. Please sign it all. I'm a huge nerd. Like,
every book.
Yeah, exactly. I need it. Here's several colors of Sharpie. But yeah, he was super cool. I showed him a little bit of Pulpit, and he was like, yeah, man, like, do your thing, dude. Same with Jason Moore, same deal. Yeah. He did a little bit of work on the Action Bible and some other stuff that I don't think people really, know. And so that was really cool just to have like a word of encouragement. Gary Shipman. Shout out to Gary Shipman. Like, that dude is a huge blessing. If you're a Christian creator, you should definitely check him out. He's done his own thing, kind of carved his own way. His work is fantastic. His art is fantastic, and he has been a blessing every time I talk to him. So shout out to Gary. Yeah. So there's for as many horror stories as there is with nerds and whatever. There's also a lot of good people in comics too. So make sure we got to shout them out too, because I think we mentioned rage baiting like 4 or 5 times. Yeah. So let's make sure we balance the scales.
Yeah. So, like when I met Bob Hall, speaking of Valiant, he was just a little tiny, because I'm at a point now with cons where I would much rather just talk to all the indie guys.
Yeah.
And like if I meet someone from the big two, like it's still gonna be rad. Like, don't get me wrong, it was still awesome talking to Jim Lee, but
Hmm.
like that was just there were dudes with just portfolios, right, of
Oh,
books that
wow.
they're just gonna turn and flip and sell and whatever. And then
Hmm.
I stand up and I have my X-Men #4, and I was like, I just have the one book, and like everybody that I talked to in the line and then getting up were like, you just have the one. I'm like, yeah, I just have the one book. I'm just a fan. Like, oh, why
That's
is
it.
this
Yeah.
such a weird experience? Because
Yeah.
everybody else had everything, and so like I think he gets it because as I was standing at the line, like at his table, like my wife and I just talked to. I've worked cons, I've worked tables, I've done the thing. I know that that is draining, and those people just need like real interactions, not just like a I'm only here for him, so don't talk to me. Like they're humans too,
Exactly.
and so like I firmly believe that God put me on this planet to just make people laugh. Like I don't have any shame. I don't care. Like I'm gonna talk to anybody, and if I look like a fool, I don't care if they laugh or I put a smile on their face. Job done. Move on. And so we're standing up, like I'm just killing time with the his handlers or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're all doing the same. Like just the one book. Like yes, yeah. For the rest of the people on this table, I only have one book for Jim to sign. Okay, and they like all were like, okay, and went back to doing the thing. So I get to Jim, and he was like, he looked down, just ready, and you could tell like dude had just been put through the ringer. He was
Hmm.
only there the one day, and he like looked down and then saw that it was just me, and I literally was standing there as childish as I could, because like at that point I had been belittled by like 14 other dudes,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I just have the one book, I'm sorry. And he was like, no, it's great, how are you, what's your name, and like had an actual interaction with me because I just was a fan of his work. I was like, man, I brought this book because like Omega Red is so captivating as a character,
Yeah.
and like he's the one that created Omega Red. Like he's also the reason for the 90s look of the X-Men and all the things, and he's my benchmark for the X-Men, and he will always be the benchmark for X-Men for me. But like I just was like, that villain, like that's the villain for me. And I want, will you sign his tentacle? And he was like,
Yes.
absolutely, I will. Yeah. And so like he signed his tentacle and it went on my X wall. And it was just like, I had that moment and that conversation with him, and he was super cool,
Yeah.
very mild mannered, but like you could tell that he got a little jolt of energy because I was just a fan and not like the transactional, like, here's my
Like,
stack of books. Whoom.
yeah,
And
like
Bob Hall
great.
was the
This is all
same
gonna end up
way.
on eBay or something.
Right. Right. And like when I met Larry Hama, he was, I brought over my book and I was like, hey, your run on Wolverine is like a large part of why I kept going back to the comic shops with my dad. And so like, thank you. Because if not for like your work on this character, like we have relational memories together, going to the
Yeah.
shops, picking up like, will you sign my book? And he was like, yeah, yeah. Do you want me to personalize it? And I was like, that would be awesome. Like, yes, please. And he was like, okay. I was like, so it's 10, 20, and he was like, no, it's free. He was like, if you're getting it personalized, I know that this is for you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about you making money off of me, so I don't need to make money off of you. And I was just like, that's so, oh, like that's so cool. Because I had just paid, I think, 60 for Chris Claremont to
Yeah.
sign my Wolverine #1. And like also totally worth it. Also super nice guy. But the fact that Larry Hama like just had that mindset, he was like, I'm just here for fans. Like,
That's awesome.
my work and all these different books and all the characters and all the stuff that I've done, like
Mhm.
everybody has a different story. And so thank you for sharing your story, because like that's awesome for me to hear. And that's a really cool thing. So I'm just happy that I was able to give you something back. And I was like, I'm gonna get along. I gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
But like,
Yeah,
that's the
I
point.
love that dude. Like every time I around, I'm like, he's so cool. Not just
Yeah.
Sabretooth, but he's cool too.
Right.
Probably did
Right.
write some cool Sabretooth stories ever.
Yeah. So when I met Bob Hall, like I had my Shadow Man #7 because that was his first book, that was his first issue on that title,
Yeah.
and so I pulled that out, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, a Shadow Man fan," and I was like, "Yeah, I have the entire run." Like,
Right.
this
Like
is
you're going to meet Bob Hall. What else are you going to bring? Like,
yeah, of course I brought like, and then immediately afterwards, my wife was like, "Babe, why didn't you wear your Shadow Man costume? Like that would have been the
oh,
perfect."
that's so cool.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
But it's hot. It's a latex mask and the wig and the leather. It's a lot.
Yeah. You got to commit with some of the cosplay con stuff. Like, you got to,
Yeah.
if you're not prepared, I was like, yeah, if you're not ready, I wouldn't bother either. But that's still cool that you have a Shadow Man costume, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's also cool that you got to meet Bob Hall. I'm totally jealous. Like, there's a small roster of creators that I haven't got to meet yet that I definitely want to, and he's one of them. And Larry Hama, actually, now that I think about it.
Both top tier. Both
Yeah.
had great experiences with them. Like, the only people left that I like really want to meet to just be like, I love your stuff. Like, I'm the Cree. I love your book. Jeff Lemire, but he rarely comes south of the border. He just stays in Toronto. Andre Sorrentino, who is, I'm pretty sure, in Italy. And then David Rubin, who bounces between Spain and Portugal. So, like, I'm not exactly
on vacation.
yeah, like I'm already committing to go to every hockey arena, and so like that's gonna force me to get my passport, so that because you have to have a passport now to go to Canada.
Yeah, or the enhanced driver's license, but I think you can only get that if you're like a resident of certain states. And you would think Ohio would be close enough, but,
right? Like
what,
Niagara Falls, which is where we used to go. Like I have family that lives in Buffalo, so when I got into hockey, not only was I like, oh, Ryan Miller, like U.S. men's hockey team, what a brick wall! He's the best freaking player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
What team does he play for? Buffalo. I have family in Buffalo. Like that's how I ended up a Buffalo fan.
Okay.
But, like we used to go to Buffalo every year. And almost every trip we would go to Niagara Falls because that's what you eat wings and you go to the falls in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And they're better on the Canadian side. And at the time, back in my day, you could just like drive and be like, we just want to look at the falls from Canada. And they're like, okay, go on. What's in your truck? Nothing. Okay, just go ahead. It's fine. We don't care.
It's wild how like the world's changed because that was pretty much. I've only been to the falls a couple times, but that was always been my experience. And like when I was little, there was a period of time we lived in Texas, so like I would just fly by myself back to Detroit, and like my grandma picked me up at the airport and stuff, But like you can't even like the idea of like a like 10-year-old or 11-year-old or 12-year-old being like your parents escort you onto the plane and then your grandparents pick you up on the other side. No, like you can't do any of that kind of crap anymore. Post 9/11 jacked up a lot of fun.
So my daughter is now 17, but when she was like 11, 12, 13, she would fly to Massachusetts where her mom's like great aunt and uncle lived, but they have a place like right on the Cape. And so they would always have her up for like a week and they would just hang out at the beach, go to Martha's Vineyard, do all of the like northeastern beautiful oceany things. And they would have to set up like hire basically a like flight attendant usher that would like once they would get to the gates, they would sit and wait with her and her mom and stepdad as they waited for the plane to start boarding. And then they would walk up to the gate for the tickets. The usher would take her onto the plane, sit next to her the entire flight, and then come off of the plane and then verify the identity of the people that she was being dropped off with. Like it was a full, so she was never alone. But I remember flying to North Carolina to hang out with my cousin by myself when I was in 7th grade. And I thought I was like big man on campus, at like 4 foot nothing, just like, I'm going to North Carolina by myself. And, sitting next to a giant pro wrestler.
Yeah.
We're on this tiny little plane, and this guy comes in and is literally like this because the plane is here. And I was like, this dude's gonna sit next to me. And sure enough, man, he stopped me. He was like, hey, little man. And I was like, hi. He was so big. Like, he was easily like Kevin Nash, like 7'2". He had the hair. He was wearing a muscle shirt, and he had just a giant dragon tattoo.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the weird things that I remember that I shouldn't remember. And we talked the entire flight back to Cincinnati, but like there was no one with me.
Yeah.
And it was just pre 2001. Like it's just how it was.
Not anymore, though. Not anymore.
Right.
You're not on that fly no more.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, that's all of my stuff.
Okay.
Those were the notes that I had. Before I let you go and get back to your Monday evening in all of its splendor, I like to use this show as just like a platform to elevate indie creators. And part of that is giving indie creators a space to just share their voice. So if
Okay.
there is something that you've got on your heart, on your mind, it could be about Pulpit, it could be about future stuff, it could be about bananas, like whatever.
Okay.
I just want to completely turn the floor over to you. And this is your space to share whatever you've got going on in your brain.
Okay. So if you are a fan of like No Country for Old Men, Daredevil Born Again, Dragon Ball Z to an extent, cool stuff in general, then you'll be a fan of Pulpit. Check it out. It's worth a read. And also keep your eyes open, because just like I've gotten a bunch of collabs, Anvil Magazine #4 is coming out. The Helm's going to be in there. I did a story in that. That's also going to be pretty awesome. Very Akira style. Got some cyberpunk vibes going on there, so you guys will dig that. Yeah, your boy's going to be doing a lot. So follow me on social media and stuff and all that good stuff. But if I can't leave you with anything else, I'm going to leave you with this. That Jesus died for everybody, right? So no matter what your background is, no matter where you come from, no matter what your experience has been with church or not being in church, belief, unbelief, whatever, he died for everybody, every man, woman, and child who ever lived. And the Bible says this, and it's very simple. Salvation is very plain, right? That if you believe with your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus was raised from the grave, thou shalt be saved, right? If you believe that Jesus is the Christ, if you believe that he died for you and ask him to forgive you, he will. No works, no carrying on what your past was like, or even what your present's like. He will save you from the uttermost to the guttermost. Jesus was born in the ghetto, so keep that in mind. He could have been anywhere. He is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and that is what he chose to do, and he chose to do it for you. Whoever can hear me now, later, whatever. So there's that, and then just be cool. Be cool with each other. Let's be cool with each other and buy my books and promote each other's books and all that stuff. So if you're hearing my voice right now, if you're not saved, get saved. Just point blank period. If you hear nothing else in this last hour and 20 minutes, that's the most important thing. But also, if you're a creator and you're thinking about doing a book or a game, or if you kind of sort of just kind of goof off on guitar, but you've never done nothing for real, just do it, man. Just let it rip, see what God does with it, and I promise you won't regret it. Even if it completely falls flat on its face, at least you can tell your grandkids that you did it. Yeah, just be bold, be fearless, right? And yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you.
Nailed it. Also, Colin just tuned in.
Colin, I tried, man. I tried. I jokingly told him I tried to stay long-winded so he could make it.
I mean, he made it just in time for the sign off. But hey, this is going to live.
For showing up. Man of his
Absolutely.
word.
Absolutely. Yeah, he followed through and did what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
But like, audio is going to go out everywhere. So if you're listening to this in the future, hey, thanks for listening. I don't know how to talk to future people. I don't. I talked to Sean Sunday last night, but it was this morning for him because he's in Australia.
I got
And
you.
so it's like, I'm talking to 14 hours in the future. How
Yeah.
is this not like the movie frequency? Like, what is happening right now? Even though it's just like simple, you know, like that's how time thing, whatever. I don't have the brain to like fully understand that, and that's okay. What I do understand is that you're making cool stuff. You're making great art. And as you can see, I made sure that this was in screen
Yeah.
so that you could see it. What you can't see is the two skulls that you drew for me as well. Those are on either side of all my pins. So I
Love
see them every day because it's always good to have scriptures just surrounding me, and I want to be more intentional.
Yeah.
So thank you for inspiring me to be more intentional. So that is going to do it though for this interview. Hang tight after I end this. I have logistical stuff for you. But what is a podcast without a tagline? And I feel like that's kind of becoming my tagline too. But that's going to be it for this interview, punks. So now do what's good for you and go read some indie comics. Until next time, I'm the Longbox Puck. He is Kenny B. And we are out of here. And I hit that and then we dance.